Seems fair to me.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it unacceptable.
Donnybrook is made possible through the generous support of the members of KETC.
Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Donnybrook. Great to have you with us. What an August 7th primary we had in our area. We're going to talk about that. But first, meet the panelists around our big green table for this edition, starting with the media veteran herself, Wendy Wiese, and Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Ray Hartmann from St. Louis Magazine, and from STLMag.com, and the St. Louis American, and I think the green Augusta fairways of PGA Championships, Alvin Reid.
I am the fairway, I am the green.
You are. Your green is greener than Belle Reid. That's looking pretty good. So, hey, thanks for sitting in last week, Alvin. Sure appreciate that.
Always a pleasure.
Man, I'll tell you what, it was a stunner. I mean, I am obviously no Nostradamus, Ray Hartmann, because I did not see this one coming, and that is Wesley Bell, Ferguson resident, member of the Ferguson City Council, defeats 28-year incumbent Robert McCullough, described by some recently as the most popular politician in the state, and did it pretty handily. What, 56 or so percent to 43%, something that I don't think anybody really saw. Maybe Wesley Bell himself, but not the official pundits. So what exactly went on here? What happened?
Well, it was historic. It was truly historic, and it was a 14-point win. And I said last week, and I was, as you know, for Wesley Bell, but I said I thought it was going to be closer. I didn't predict that he would win. Yeah. I thought he wouldn't. But think about this. Political science has become political fortune telling. I mean, it's just so far off. Two of the most respected political scientists have been very good over the years. Ken Warren and Terry Jones were both quoted in the Post-Dispatch as last week as thinking this was a landslide. Sure. There's a lot of people. I'm not picking on them, but the fact is, people that felt that way missed this by like 30 or 40 percentage points, and I can't explain it. I do think it does speak to the power of some of the folks that were behind Wesley, and give him credit. He had a great campaign, and it really shows though that we're at a time where people there's very little polling data out there, and what there is very unreliable on a local level.
Well, you know, I was totally stunned. I mean, if you would have told me 56-43 and McCullough winning, I would have been surprised that Wesley Bell came that close. Mm-hmm. I mean, I would have been shocked. But I think that the young voters were really invested in a lot of the young candidates this time, and Wesley Bell was kind of, to my amazement, the lead person.
And at 9 o'clock, you know, we've done this enough that you see numbers at, 2 hours after the polls close, and you know where a race is going. And that's when I couldn't believe it. I said, like, wait a minute. He's ahead enough now that he's not going to lose, okay? North County still got to come in and all that. It's like, no, he's not losing. This is over.
Right.
It's 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
It wasn't even close. And that's what I just can't. You could say Ferguson backlash. Well, okay, maybe, but he's a city council person in Ferguson, but Mayor Knowles ran again in Ferguson and won handily.
But he was very, very careful in the postmortems not to make it all about, and leading up to the primary, not to make it all about Michael Brown and what happened 4 years ago today. I think that he's shown himself to be a pretty deft politician. I mean, when you don't think? I mean, this is so incredibly impressive.
It is.
Right.
And I think the way he approached it, he had a campaign worker who was, trying to kind of amp up the volume a little bit. with the Buy Bob hashtag, and he made him take it down off the website.
Well-
and his father was also a police officer,
true,
as
and
McClellan.
true.
So,
I think the
says
big
he's gonna
factor
support
here.
the police 200%.
I think we'll find out.
What that looks like.
I'm kind of concerned because he is inexperienced. He's never prosecuted a felony before, and this could be Kim Gardner Part 2 because she was inexperienced. I think some people feel that she hasn't done that well as the circuit attorney. But there's no doubt that when the ACLU throws in $250,000 into the race, like they're doing around the country with, cash bail reform and justice reform in big city after big city, that makes a big difference. And I'm really surprised because Wesley Bell was the judge in Velda City, which was sued by Arch City defenders because they were keeping one woman, Donia Pierce, in jail because she couldn't make bail. And he was the judge. And now he's the guy who's the poster child for cash bail reform.
Well, Charlie, you're a little late litigating that, I think, and I mean, I understand.
I know,
But-
no
and
one
I
did.
think it's to Wesley Bell's credit also that I do think Ferguson, people not happy with the Darren Wilson outcome, I think that was part of it. I think, frankly, Bob McCullough, having been there that long, did take this a bit for granted.
Yes.
He didn't show up at a lot of stuff, and I think that, and that's not shot at him, it's just kind of human nature when you think the polls showing him way ahead. And that happens to politicians of both parties where they just get too comfortable and don't take an opponent seriously.
Oh, that's right.
And but I give him credit. I think Wesley Bell, and I don't think we should start with comparisons to Kim Gardner and all the negatives. We got a new prosecutor for the first time in 28 years. Let's see how he does. Give him a chance.
When he talks about being tougher on the, not tougher, but holding the police accountable, I think everybody at this moment in time just wants to know what that is going to look like.
I think-
Well, especially,
and I think it's good that he's
you
saying it.
complain about McCullough, but don't forget Eric Holder's Justice Department came to the same conclusion
I'm not
as
complaining
Bob
about
McCullough
McCullough.
on that.
I'm not complaining
I'm
about
just
him.
trying
He
to figure
lost
out
the election.
who voted for Wesley Bell.
too.
I'm not
And
even
you're going
concerned
door to
about
door,
that.
aren't you?
And I'm like, I would like to go door to door.
You know what it is?
How did this happen?
It's a
The
progressive movement, Alvin, that's been in the city that is now in the county.
No, but
with
this
the
was
union,
not a-
with the unions
there
coming
you
out
go.
for Prop A, I
Yep.
would have thought that all these working class union men and women would see Bob
vote for
McCullough
McCullough.
and just think, okay, good old Bob.
And-
I'd vote for
and
him.
they did, and their wives and kids voted for Wesley Bell.
I don't think this is what the whole point is. There's a Firesign theater album when I was in college. Everything you know is wrong. It ought to be sort of the theme of
Maybe
trying
so.
to analyze stuff.
I'll buy that. All right,
social-
Alvin, let's move on to Prop A. Now, this was also historic, maybe more so, because it's the first time a state has actually overturned right to work. So newspapers are editorializing this across the nation about Missouri, and it wasn't even close. But the Americans for Prosperity, which I think is a Koch brothers group, have said, all right, well, we'll see in January. It's a minor speed bump on the road to right to work because we're just going to legislate it in 2019. Do you think that's going to happen?
Oh, absolutely. We were against puppy mills. We were against concealed carry. When I say we, I mean voters in the state of Missouri voted one way and the legislature did something altogether different. I think one reason Prop A went down was because they put forth no effort to actually pass Prop A. The yes was minimal. The no was everywhere. And then, I guess the guy that runs the Missouri Chamber said, the unions with their, all the money just drowned out our positive economic message. So well, you got beat, okay? And then you need to go back to the drawing board and see why we got beat. And maybe, just maybe, even Republicans, which I've heard that it was 50-50 on Republican ballots taken, which doomed it. If you're only going to get 50% of the Republican
Right.
vote, you're going to lose on a Prop A. So it's, once again, I'm not surprised that the no votes won. I am a little surprised at how overwhelming it was.
I disagree with Alvin about the analysis going forward. I agree that once again, the margin was stunning.
Yeah.
But also what the margin says, in the case of the puppy mills and the gun control, where the was a pure rural-urban split right across the board, and rural Missouri was overwhelmingly on one side, and
That's
the
a good
metropolitan areas were overwhelming. This one did only carry 15 counties in the state, and there's a lot of blue-collar workers in rural Missouri. We in the metropolitan areas don't always recognize. I think with this kind of margin, I would be surprised. Of course, they'll introduce some legislation. I don't think it's going anywhere
Well,
fast.
another thing that's really crazy about it, though, is, the same state that overwhelmingly says no to Prop A overwhelmingly supported Eric Greitens.
Right.
I mean, we
And
have
he made right to work one of his issues. You're
Yeah,
right.
we
I mean,
have
it was-
politicians who go around and say, I support right to work, and people go, I'll vote for that. And then we have election on, do you want to right for work? People go, of course not.
Well, it's-
I mean, it's
according,
very strange.
according to Gallup last spring, when all of the teachers around the country were walking out, in Arizona and West Virginia, there was a great deal of support, like 52% support for those teachers. But the Atlantic ran a piece today, and the gist of the article was essentially that it was a very expensive victory for unions. I mean, when you think about it, when you run the risk of Missouri legislating it back in again at some point down the road. But more so is that last year was a historic low in terms of union participation in the workplace. 11%. I mean, that's incredible, and that's where the unions, and this has been coming on for a very long time, with governments representing both Democrats and Republicans. But the unions have to look at their survival in the future.
no
even
kidding.
But this
more
was
so.
their.
All right.
You give them credit. They had
Good
a
point.
huge,
You bet.
huge
Okay, you bet. You
victory.
did a great
I mean, you
job.
got,
Yeah.
and everybody's kind of buried them, and this showed that the rumors of their death
That
are
they can
exaggerated.
that they can outspend.
non-union people.
Well, no,
All right,
I
let's
think
move on.
rumors of their death are greatly
Well,
exaggerated.
they could
I
convince
think-
people that aren't in unions
Yeah,
to support
right.
them.
Right.
That's what they
Exactly.
did.
Alvin, let me ask you about another topic, and that was the county executive race, where I think it was presumed by most people because the unions would be coming out in full force for Prop A, that Steve Stenger, the county executive, the incumbent, who had the endorsement from just about every union, would be sitting pretty and just blow away the competition. In this case, Mark Mantovani. Instead, 180,000 votes cast, and Stenger won by just a little over 1,100. So, your take on this one?
Just some more oddity. Not surprised that Stenger won. I thought he would win. I thought it would be close. Maybe not that close. I once again, who voted for whom in this election?
I'd almost want to reach out if I were Mark Mantovani.
I guess if you're less than 1%, they go back over
Yeah, I
it or
know.
whatever. But he did the classy thing, said looks like we lost. I commend him because I think checks and balances all work. He almost got 50% of the vote. Good for him. Stenger won. Where do we go in the future? You lost your councilman that supports you, Pat Dolan. You lost your legal cover when McClellan lost. So if it ever really came down to would the prosecutor, come after me, well, you lost your Jeff Sessions. He's alone, and he's going to have to truly lead now, or things are going to get worse before they get better.
I think he's going to do fine. Because I was for him, and I did. He survived my prediction that he'd win, although I think I said he'd win by 7. I meant to say 0.7 instead of 7. But, we'll see. He will clearly have to change his, and I think the county council needs to change. I think that now that the election's over, well, I'm just saying, now the election's over, there's been some people that were clearly, and I think Mark Mantovani acquitted himself very well in the race. Everything's fine. I think the question is going forward whether they'll have a better sense of cooperation. I think they will.
We'll see.
I think they're going to take,
But
and Sanders, I think there's going to have to be a lot of give and take.
Ray, the county council should feel empowered right now.
Exactly.
I mean, Lisa
Which is
Clancy,
why there's gonna be
why
more
should
give and
this-
take.
Why should the county council decide that they're going to have to work more with Stenger?
Well, I think both
I
sides.
mean,
He said
they won, and
Ray,
their propositions won.
It was Stenger said in an
It's
interview
Stenger that
after
has
the
to work
election
with
that,
them.
well, I guess we don't have a choice. We really have to work together now. No, you're the one that doesn't have a choice.
Okay,
You're
I mean,
the
it's
one that
true.
doesn't have
I mean,
to
it's
work.
true.
Terry Jones said that he said it's going to be a
Terry
very,
Jones
very
just-
difficult 4 years
Well,
for Steve Stenger if he doesn't learn to work and
I
play well with
think
others.
he will, and I think they
He
have
better.
both sides. In any
Here's the
kind of
thing.
thing,
Here's
have
the
to
thing
give
about
and take.
Stenger. He's got to show up at the meetings, and then when he goes to the meetings, I was at one meeting where they said, "Hey, how about your meeting with the governor, Mike Parson?" And Stenger says, "I'll send you a memo about it." He didn't want to talk about it, and that's got to end. And now they've got Lisa Clancy instead of Pat Dolan. Dolan was with Stenger, and
Right.
also the voters approved that lawyer for the county
Right.
council,
Yeah, that's what I mean.
and they voted
Well,
that
that's
Ernie
good.
Tracus can have his
And
job.
Mark Hart-
So
I mean,
it's
All of that's fine, and what I'm saying is they're going to have to work together better. So what's in other words,
No,
it's like you
he's
want
gonna have to
okay,
work
he's
together.
going to have to
Gonna
work.
have to work
Steve
with
Stenger has
Fine.
got to learn a lesson, and
Fine.
among other things,
Fine,
I
but
think he's got to watch
I do think
all the
there's-
pet projects he puts through the Port Authority, because
Okay.
one story after another in the Post-Dispatch every week about donors getting contracts.
Right, and then
that-
meanwhile,
that's a problem.
Meanwhile,
that
the
both
dark money
sides will
comes
work
in
together.
from Rex Singfield, and then after that, St. Louis Business Journal editorial says, like, "Hey, it's time for you to do better, Steve Stenger. One way you could do better is sign off on this city-county merger." Because Mantovani didn't want any part of it, but here's your chance to grow up and be a good guy and support city-county merger. And who's putting the report together? Rex Singfield. See, he hadn't even run yet in November, and we're already down the path.
And-
that-
but we
You're
can't-
talking about
we
the published report that Rex Singfield gave $160,000 at the last minute to Steve Stenger.
right. And that's like, why is that? City-county merger.
What is it? Is it August? What's the drop dead date on the county budget and all of that? That they don't have enough to run the county government, the legislative part of it, after October 13th or 15th. And Mark Harder's saying, we're in really uncharted territory here, and that's why. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, what's when will we find out about the result of the lawsuit that they've brought against him?
Well, and I bet those two measures are going to be the subject of lawsuits too.
With 2 days from the election, you're talking about all the reasons not to be for why Wesley Bell was, whatever he did in Velda Village. At this point, on
Whatever
both,
he did.
What I'm
He
trying to
jailed
say,
a woman 'cause she couldn't make bail.
excuse me,
That's
he
what he
also
did.
won the
All
election 2 days ago. So Wesley Bell is the prosecuting attorney. Steve Stenger is still county executive, and it's like,
But Wesley
let
Bell
them work.
Wesley
Let's
Bell
see
doesn't
what
have,
happens.
Wesley Bell doesn't have a history. Steve Stenger
Okay.
already has a history.
Okay,
that people
my
can-
point is, let's see what happens. They do have to work together better. If you want to say it's all Stenger that's got to change, I happen to think the county council needs to read the bills
Okay,
it passes.
we know your
Well, I do.
work
So,
together
all right,
better.
let's
I think
move
that
on.
was a
Wendy,
dog
Bill, I want to ask you about Lacey Clay, who handily, by 20 points, defeated Cori Bush. And I think there are some people who are writing the obituary for the Clay machine. I'm not sure he has a machine, you pointed that out, but he sure has political popularity. And now the family's been in office in that seat for about 50 years. And not only did he win, but one of his assistants, Brian Williams, who got assistance from Lacey Clay, he won his election. And it wasn't even close. People were talking about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her effect. Well, it did not defeat Lacey Clay. What's your take?
Well, surprisingly, I predicted this one correctly, but I can't explain why. I mean, when the young people surged to Wesley Bell and they surged to Lisa Clancy, and let's not forget Michael Butler beat Sharon Carpenter,
Absolutely, yeah.
who's been in office longer than we've had a show. And all these young people surging forward, and yet they didn't pick up on Cori Bush. And despite Ocasio-Cortez coming to town for her. So I wasn't surprised that Lacey Clay won, but I really can't explain it.
Washington Post had a good article, not a good, I didn't mean that like an editorial, but just an article in that it said that sigh of relief on Wednesday morning that centrist Democrats, they named 4 or 5 of them, not only won, but, dispatched of their more liberal challengers. And it, it's
And they considered Lacey Clay as a centrist?
yeah,
Well,
yes
okay.
they did.
Yes,
Yes.
I like Lacey Clay,
If-
but I would never call her.
According to the article or the opinion piece in the American, one of the things that made Lacey Clay sort of at least appear to be in danger was the way that he had played, political footsie with Francis Slay and on the North Side project. But they did seem to point out the importance of him being more engaged at the local level, and I think everybody has been saying that for a long time. But he said in an article with the New York Times that he smoked his last couple of opponents. The Americans seem to be suggesting that a little bit of humility and a little bit more time at home would
I
really
tell you
help him
guys, I
serve
want
him
to say
well.
something about Lacey Clay, because first of all, there are empirical measures of whether you're a liberal or conservative. You can measure them from the right or the left. Go to votesmart.org and see the ratings. Lacey Clay is among the most liberal voting, has one of the most liberal voting records in the country, unlike, say, Claire McCaskill, who's truly a centrist, yada, yada. But here's the deal I think about Lacy Clay. I didn't expect him to lose. I thought there was a big X factor in terms of the youth movement stuff. I said that. But I wish that Lacy Clay would bring the same self-confidence and power and enthusiasm to serving on the national stage as he does to winning elections. In other words, there's no question he's established he's unbeatable. But a week or two ago, and you'll jump me for saying it, the President of the United States did a racist attack on LeBron James and on Don Lemon, and I want to see Lacy Clay on all the cable networks as one of the elder statesmen of the Black Caucus.
Okay, that may be true,
but I'm not seeing that,
Let
and
me
I
tell you
think
what
it's
Lacy
wrong.
Clay did do, and I'm not as big a supporter, but he did get $1 billion for North St. Louis in the NGA.
Fine.
Then he was part of the group that got the transformation of the Arch Ground, so that's $400 million. Plus, you've got Cortex going through his district, which is creating I don't know how many thousand jobs. I don't agree with everything, but the only thing that separated him from his opponent was one issue, and that was Paul McKee. That's the only thing they disagree with. So why would you vote for her? She was a woman that even the Clergy Coalition said, where is her church? She's a pastor, but this church she talks about, it's nowhere around there. She was a media creation.
Well,
I'm
she's
saying
tilting at windmills. When you run for the Senate and for Congress before you run for the State House, that's kind of a problem. She's doing it in reverse.
Well, she had huge issues. She lost her RN license. She was late on her taxes. She got evicted from apartments. And she was like, I'm going to be your next congressman. Well, guess what? He was solid. He had actually delivered for the district.
fine.
There was a reason to vote for this guy.
No one's arguing that. My point is,
But it's
I'm
like,
saying
it
I
just
want to
seemed
see
like-
him be an activist.
It seemed like there was something
Right.
happening which did not happen. So maybe it was the appearance was not such. I'm not arguing with Clay and technically what he's done for the district. I just thought he might
think
be
he's
ripe.
been
he might be ripe to
and
get
I thought he
beat.
was liberal enough that the young progressives couldn't look at him like a Bob McCullough or something. I mean, this was a liberal congressman.
He earned his victory. I'm just saying, and I think he's been fine as a constituent congressman. I think he should be a national leader.
Maybe
He
not
could
you
be.
guys, but I think in the media there was excitement around the woman, Ms. Cori Bush, because she was associated with the Bronx victory. And it was like, okay, something happened in the Bronx, so it's going to happen here. And it was comparing apples to oranges.
That was
But
and that was
we do that
proven
all
true.
the
wasn't
time.
associated
I mean,
with
not
the
really,
Bronx
but that
victory.
happens all the time.
I know, but you were talking about all the shirts you saw on the Webster
No, I
Village
didn't. I
Parade.
saw a lot of
Like-
people.
Well,
there
there
seemed
was,
to be.
and-
They were physically there.
But that doesn't mean anything.
It was,
I didn't say
it was
it
happening.
did.
We just had the wrong race.
Charlie,
We
right.
thought, hey, it's
Yeah.
happening here. So it
Right.
was really happening over
Charlie,
there.
and I
Wesley
saw like
Bell.
on the March for Our Lives, there was that vibe, and it true. No, there was, and it turned out not to be anything. And good for Lacy that he won. I just hope he starts being more forceful publicly on a national
All right, well,
stage.
I think you're not listening. I think you're not listening.
Next time you go on a Donald Trump screed, substitute Steve Stinger's name for Donald Trump's, and that's how this guy feels in this
I
chair
know,
right
I
now.
know.
Okay, now let's not talk about Trump.
All right.
Come on, guys. This is Donnybrook. It's a unrehearsed discussion of local issues, and usually polite. Wendy, I want to ask you about Ann Wagner. Now, she won handily, but she's up against Court. Oh gosh,
Van Ostrin.
I should know that. Sorry, Court.
Van Ostrin.
And do you think she's beatable? I mean, let's face it. These districts are pretty much gerrymandered to favor the incumbent. They're loaded. They're stacked in one direction. So, is it possible the court can pull this off?
Did she beat Glenn Keenan by 23 and then Bill Otto by 20 percentage points? She's enjoyed a pretty comfortable winning margin since she's been in office. And he has some McCaskill bona fides, and I think he's working social media very well. I saw kind of a cute self-effacing, making fun of his name, because it is kind of it's different and certainly not as easy as Ann Wagner. But I think she'll pull it out. I really do. I think he'll give her a run for her money.
That's why
but I think
signs
she'll.
just say court, which made sense.
Right,
You know,
right.
like he figured that out early. We talked a little bit last week. The district has changed a little bit. When it was kind of redrawn, I don't think they realized that, there's kind of like a there's several
They were
sets.
bringing the Reid
There's a couple of sets of tracks in Kirkwood, and they actually added like kind of the wrong side of the track. So we're a little more, you know,
A little more court than Ann.
little more court,
Little more blue than
there
red.
have been
Okay.
big
I think
fans.
she is very beatable. I think she is the favorite, clearly, but she's in a suburban. She's in the very kind of district that the Republicans are worried about keeping. Suburban Republican, particularly worried about suburban Republican women. I think that the Mueller investigation might have more impact, no, I'm serious, on which we don't know anything about how it's going to turn out. I think it might be determinative of that race as much as anything, how it goes or doesn't go.
Maybe so.
I think it's going to be a function of
But, you know,
national politics.
they usually
And
say, Ray-
I think Court's a very solid case. He's a very smart guy and he's going to make a good run at it. But it really depends on the national
If
scene.
Court makes it, but she could say, look, the economy hasn't been better.
I'm saying
And so if you're
if he
going to go
makes it-
national politics, you could say to the people in that district who are generally
he-
doing pretty well, right? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
basically
absolutely.
speaking.
Well, I was just
hey,
going to say that.
You want
I
to
was
fix
just
this?
going to say
Maybe.
the key is, what are you going to do for us? Because I'll be the first to admit, those of us who live in that part of West County want to know what's in it kind of for us. And a lot of us aren't getting a whole lot out of it because, oh, look, Ann Wagner represents the people that voted for her and pretty much nobody else. Now, God bless her because politics is like that right now. But I think the one
Politics is always
yeah,
like
right.
that.
But the avenue for him is, hey, I'm going to do this for the entire, county, and Lord
I
knows we
say
need
he's got to
some
make it
leadership
about
in the
Trump
county.
and about her flip-flopping on Trump.
Well,
I think
I
that's
think-
what he's got to run on.
I think she's a very strong candidate, and I feel the same way about her that I felt about Bob McCullough. I'm serious. I think it does, and I think
Well, that's
I
right.
can picture this.
That does not bode well for her.
All
None of
right.
us.
Hey, that's it for our comments. How about yours? We heard from Mike Zavorka of Hillsborough, who wrote, "Please don't speak over one another. Your arguing reminds me of a Democratic convention." And we heard from Joseph Niemoller, who wrote, "Just want to say congratulations on the civility shown on last week's Donnybrook. I don't know if people had been reading Emily Post or if Alvin is a less provocative provocateur than Charlie, but the panelists seem to talk over each other less than usual." Thank you, Joseph, and thanks everybody for writing. You can write us care of KETC, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Don't forget those emails, letters@ketc.org, and those tweets, hashtag DonnybrookSTL, which Ray and I are going to read in a matter of moments because we'll be taking your phone calls and reading your tweets on your turn. So everybody's excused, but you, don't go away. We'll be right back.
Donnybrook is made possible through the generous support of the members of KETC.